Hello, world. What's up, everyone? This is Dave from the Fight Bananas podcast. Guys, you have stumbled upon the UFC 244 recap extravaganza. This is it. This is the show of all shows. I can't wait to talk all things UFC 244. The main event, the prelims, the new stars that the UFC made that show. So much to talk about UFC 244, and we're going to get all into it. Also, at the end of the episode, I'm going to make my UFC 250 fight predictions. You know, UFC, they do it big. I remember UFC 100, Brock Lesnar versus Frank Mir. GSP was on the card. That was the Michael Bisping, Dan Henderson, the Hendo Bomb. So when the UFC, these big numbers, they do it big. UFC 200 was huge. So I believe UFC 250 will be a show for the ages. But UFC 244 was a show for an ages. I think 1 year, 5 years, 10, 20 years from now, we're going to look back at that show. Madison Square Garden, The Rock, the BMF title, the president, Donald Trump. So much to talk about. Superstars in the prelims, all over the card, Hall of Famers everywhere. The BMF title was amazing. But, guys, before we go into 244, let's thank a couple of our sponsors. Warhammer Fightwear, they've been with us since the beginning, since day one. So check out WarhammerFightwear.com. You can always go on Amazon, check out Warhammer Fightwear, put that in the search bar. They have the best gear for MMA. And what I like about it, guys, they have it for kids. They got it for the ladies, the whole family. Christmas is coming, guys. Make sure, go to WarhammerFightwear.com and just, get everything for the family. Go to WarhammerFightwear.com. And then also, our family guys at EndStillNutrition.com. If you need supplements for your body, if you need them for your fight fans, your fight family, go to EndStillNutrition.com. Go on Instagram. Make sure you like their page. Give them a follow at The Real and Still. Also, we want to thank real quick our newest sponsor to the show. We love adding new sponsors. We love it. We love spreading the word, and it is Mako Tech mouth guards. First of all, Brock Weaver wears them. If it's good enough for Brock Weaver, it's good enough for the Fight Bananas family. So we're going to spread the word, guys. Mako Tech mouth guards. Like their page on Facebook. Go on Instagram as well. Give them a follow. Great company. They're changing the mouth guard industry. Mako Tech mouth guards. All right, guys, let's go bananas for UFC 244. Welcome back into the Fight Bananas studio, the UFC 244 recap show. We're going to talk it all, guys. The main event, BMF title, the co-main, and everything underneath. So let's get started. The show on the prelims, first and foremost, I loved how the matchmaking, you had everyone's eyes. Jorge Masvidal and Nate Diaz for the BMF title. The Rock was in the building. You had the attention of the UFC universe. So what does Dana White and Shelby and Maynard do, guys? They put on the future of the UFC on the prelims. They put the future of the heavyweight division, the passing of the torch to Arlovsky. How about Edmund Shabazian? A new middleweight contender. You thought the middleweight division was tough enough. Murderers Row. New York Yankees, tough. Now you throw in another undefeated monster. Edmund says he is the evolution of mixed martial arts. Then the main event of the prelim, we have finally crowned a new number one contender in the light heavyweight division. I'm sorry, Dominic Reyes. Corey Anderson put on a show. Corey Anderson put on a spectacular, event. A quick, devastating knockout right away to Johnny Walker. Dominated the fight from the get-go. And then the theater after the fight. He made sure. He put his foot down to say, Dana White, I'm the number one contender. Corey Anderson versus John Jones has to be billed now. That fight has to be locked in. Corey Anderson made a statement at UFC 244. And I think John Bones says statement heard. I can't wait for that fight. Light heavyweight championship on the line. Okay, so now we go into the main card. And it's at Madison Square Garden. The building was electric all night. Media members, people in the audience, they said they felt the electricity, the chants, the theme songs of the fighters. And we go right away. We start the card with Gregor Gillespie, undefeated, a monster in the lightweight division. Some people said he's the one that can defeat Khabib Nurmagomedov. He's the one that should be next. But he fights Kevin Lee, 27 years old. Moved up to welterweight. He started at a lightweight, fought Tony Ferguson, fought some of the toughest fighters in the game. And Kevin Lee put the, knockout of the year, not even knockout of the night, with the scenario and with the scenery and the pageantry. Kevin Lee puts a head kick to Gregor's face, and I don't know if Gregor's still walking. I loved how Kevin Lee took this moment, took this platform, and he made it his own. He made it the Kevin Lee show. UFC 244 will always be remembered as the knockout where Kevin Lee knocked out Gregor. So big ups to Kevin Lee. I think Kevin Lee is going to come back on this episode a little bit later in my UFC 250 predictions. We're moving right up the card. That heavyweight division. Derrick Black Beast Lewis, every time there's a card in the Madison Square Garden in New York City, Derrick Lewis needs to be involved. He's the mayor. It used to be Willis Reed, Walt Frazier, Mark Messier, Patrick Ewing. I know the Knicks haven't been good in a long time, so there's no one new to say. But, guys, Derrick Lewis is the mayor. Another win for him in New York City. The crowd loves him. Another funny post-fight interview with Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan was a little bit of like egging him on. He wanted something. He wanted another gem. Like, his balls were hot. It's incredible, guys. UFC 244. And we're just getting started. We haven't even hit the three biggest fights. And with Corey Anderson, Edmund, Kevin Lee, Derrick Lewis, future superstars, future Hall of Famers, future title contenders, all this. And we still had The Rock in the main event. It was incredible. The third fight of the main card, was uber important to the welterweight division. Stephen WonderBoy Thompson fought for the title, had a draw with Tyron Woodley, an all-timer in the welterweight division. Was on a little bit of a losing streak. Showtime Pettis, he does what Showtime does. There's no fault. There's no, you don't fall back in my book when you get TKO'd by Showtime. And then Vicente Luque, a rising superstar in the MMA game in the welterweight division, just had that crazy war with Mike Platinum Perry. I think that should be absolutely the face of an MMA scoreboard. But that's a different time. That's a different podcast. He won the fight. Great winning streak for Luque. And this fight was the winner moves up. The winner is in a ultra important fight in the spring of 2020 in the welterweight division. And that welterweight division, we'll get into it in the main event, is absolutely stacked. We saw Usman and we saw Colby Covington talk trash that Friday at the press conference. That's for the title. You got the BMF title in this welterweight division. You have studs across the board in this fight. Winner moves up. Loser is just almost a gatekeeper for the next generation. And WonderBoy Thompson was amazing. Was spectacular. He looked like the old WonderBoy Thompson before he fought Tyron Woodley. His pace, his length, his offense. He was throwing kicks and elbows at times that you shouldn't throw kicks and elbows. WonderBoy Thompson took over New York City. I thought it was arguably the performance of the night. I thought it was that good. I thought it was that impressive because I'm that high on Luque. When you defeat someone with that highly skilled Vicente Luque, credit is earned. All right, co-main event, guys. Darren Till versus Kevin Gastelum. in the middleweight division. Darren Till moved up, and let me talk about Till for a little bit. Darren Till, welterweight, was making massive weight cuts to be a welterweight fighter. Had a great run all the way to the number one contender of Tyron Woodley's belt. Tyron Woodley defeated him, and then right after that, we know what happens. Jorge Masvidal happens. And that was the main event. I almost think that the UFC was trying to make a superstar in that night, and they did with Jorge Masvidal. So Darren Till had to take a step back, had to, gauge his career, see what's next, see what the fight game it has in store for him. And what it has in store for him is the middleweight division. So you would think that he would get the number 8, 10, 15, maybe not even a ranked guy. Just let me get in the middleweight division. Let me wet my beak. And then let's fight. No, guys. He fights Kelvin Gastelum, who just had the best middleweight fight of the year, a 5-round war against the middleweight undefeated champion Israel Adesanya. Kelvin is a complete monster, an all-timer. The weight cut was tough for Kelvin. It always is. I heard that. Oh, guys, I think Till is definitely going to win because the weight cut. Guys, the weight cut is always tough for the gas man. Always. But the man always gets the job done. 8-2 in his last 10 in the UFC. Kelvin is a straight monster. And Darren Till won by split decision, which is crazy to me. That's another MMA scoreboard. How can one judge think one fighter won all 3 rounds and the other judge think the other fighter won all 3 rounds? That's just absurd. The fight was razor sharp. It was close. I think Till won. I do. But if Kelvin got the victory, I wouldn't be, crazy about it. But for one judge to think one fighter won all 3 rounds, 30-27, and the other thought the other one did, come on, UFC. Come on, Dana. It's time to show the scores. It's time to train judges. But it's just time to up the ante on the score intake. And I know all the time. I love what Dana says it. Finish it. Don't put it to the judges. I don't want to see it. I don't want to complain. No excuses. Work harder. I love it. But Darren Till steps up and wins the co-main event in the middleweight division, and his name is right up there. His name is main event in the next ESPN Plus card. His name is in the co-main event of another humongous UFC, maybe UFC 249. Maybe a co-main event, Stipe DC. Maybe a co-main event, John Jones versus Corey Anderson. We'll see. We'll talk about it at the end of the episode. I cannot wait. My UFC 250 predictions. But let's get into it. It's what we're here to listen to, what I was here to watch. We had a big group over the house, UFC 244 main event. The BMF title, Jorge Masvidal versus Nate Diaz. 2 warriors, 34 years young, was born in the fight game. Their records are not even their records, guys. They fought more, fights in their training camp, on the street, in the school bathroom. These guys are fighters. They were born fighters. You got Street Jesus at the 305 in Miami. You got Nate Diaz, a West Coast gangster. This fight was just perfect. The matchmaking on this was perfect. UFC deserves every single dollar they are printing up today. What a great job by the UFC. Madison Square Garden. They bring in The Rock. The Rock is Miami. His blood is green and orange from the University of Miami. First round management, The Rock, Miami. I get it. I loved it. I'm a wrestling fan. I do smell what The Rock is cooking. He comes out there before the fight. His theme music hits. The place was electric. The main event was just everyone's hairs were standing on their arm. Masvidal. Nate Diaz comes out first. going back and forth in the octagon. Anxious, excited, couldn't wait to throw down. Much respect to Nate Diaz. Jorge Masvidal comes in. And one of the biggest, loudest pops I've heard in the UFC. Jorge Masvidal owned the week, owned the weekend, owned UFC 244. Masvidal is king of the UFC right now. The fight starts, and I love how Masvidal started with the fake running knee. It was just for one, funny to Ben Askren, and just a, hey guys, that's who they are. Both men are showmanship. You know, they can be in movies, in theater. These guys are fighters born and bred, but these guys are showman guys. These guys can put on a show anywhere in the world and make people pay. So Jorge in the first round with a great combination. I believe it was a left hook, and then when Nate lowered himself to kind of feel the pain a little bit, boom, head kick. And to any human being in the world, Diaz would go down, TKO, and the fight would be stopped. But we all know Nate Diaz is not human, has a chin made out of rubber. Unbelievable. All the respect in the world to him. Just kept on fighting. Just kept on going. But Masvidal opened up a cut over and under Nate Diaz's eye. I thought it was a short elbow. On the Fight Breakdown, on the Fight Bananas podcast that you can download and subscribe on all podcast platforms, or just subscribe to the YouTube channel, I called a second round TKO in the clinch game with elbows, short elbows, or a knee. And Masvidal, to me, owned the clinch game. So I feel pumped. I feel a little bit proud, a little bit of ownership that Jorge dominated in that fashion. But what a great fight. It was a war. 15 minutes. Donald Trump, the president of these United States, were there in action. It used to be, you know, the MMA and UFC used to be cockfighting. And now the president is there in the first row to watch the main event. The BMF title. They made a title that was absolutely mint. Straight fire. Great job again, UFC. After the third round, the cut was too much. It was too big. Doctor stoppage. Of course, everyone booed. Everyone in the moment was upset. Guys, it was the right call. Dana White thought it was the right call. I thought it was the right call. Yeah, I wish we can see 2 more rounds. Maybe we'll see it again soon. Who knows? But in that moment, when we see a lot of, unfortunate incidents that's happened in boxing over the last year, it was the right call. Sometimes these guys are so BMF. You have to take it out of their hands. You have to not give them the decision. Masvidal did enough in that fight. He dominated with power and precision. His boxing was exceptional. Jorge gets the win. The Rock puts the title around his waist like he promised. Promise delivered by The Rock. The biggest movie star in Hollywood is at UFC 244. Jorge's post-fight speech was awesome, like we all knew it would. The media scrum afterwards, Jorge was so funny. He's eating pizza, drinking, making fun of Conor McGregor. And we'll get to that in a second. What a great show, guys. I'm telling you, 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, we'll look back and be like, where were you at UFC 244? Jorge Masvidal, the king of the UFC. Nate Diaz, one of the greatest warriors this sport has ever seen. Just what an absolute card. If you guys have any questions, definitely slide them into the Fight Banana official on Instagram. Slide into those DMs. I can talk about this card for hours. I know the professor, John Rafford, is going to want to talk about it. But I had to come on. I had to get in the Banana Studio and just speak it into the world. Jorge, victorious. What's next? Darren Till wins the co-main event. Kevin Lee, maybe the star of the card. And Derrick Black Beast Lewis, the mayor of New York City. The mayor of Madison Square Garden. What a show that was put on by the UFC. Big ups to The Rock. Promise delivered. The President of the United States in the building. I'm not talking politics. I don't care what you guys think that way or this way. The President was there in flesh and blood to watch mixed martial arts. That is an absolute plus, guys. That's a plus for all of us. What a show UFC 244 put on. All right. Before I talk about UFC 250 and give you my fight predictions, real quick, I want to talk about Fusion CBD products. I absolutely love their coffee beans. Fusion CBD coffee beans. There's 3 different flavors. I love the Coastin'. I love drinking that at night. Around 9:30, 10 at night, I do my best work. I do some podcasts. I write some articles. I do laundry. You do whatever you got to do at 9:30 at night. FusionCBDProducts.com. Check them out on Instagram. What a great, great company. Before UFC 250, last Jorge Masvidal, big ups. Just so pumped. What a great guy. Met him at the Dean Tool Promotions show over the summer. Amazing. Jorge Masvidal, the king of the UFC. All right, we are back. Here we go. UFC 250. Here's my fight predictions. Here's the fight card. And I want to give you some backup. I want to give you some history on it and how did I get to this mega, probably the best card ever in the UFC history. And Dana White, if you want to take it, you're welcome. So UFC 244, we just talked about it. One of the best shows in the organization's history. Loved it. UFC 245 is already all locked in. Usman versus Colby Covington. Amanda Nunes on it. Max Holloway defending his title. What a great card. So what's next? I would make 246. And Conor McGregor's at a press conference, talked about it. This Cowboy Cerrone thing, I believe, is legitimately going to happen. So let's just say UFC 246 is Cowboy versus Conor, the notorious one. Okay, UFC 247. It's the fight the whole world has been waiting for. The UFC universe has been waiting for. The Fight Bananas community has been waiting for. Tony Ferguson versus Khabib Nurmagomedov for the lightweight championship. This is the title match. This is the fight. It's finally going to happen. UFC 247. Okay, 2 left, guys, before we get to 250. UFC 248. So you just had the fight that the Ferguson, Khabib, everyone wanted to see. So you gotta come back. The next month has got to be humongous. And it doesn't get bigger than Jon Jones, the greatest mixed martial artist of all time. The light heavyweight championship of this world, Jon Jones in the main event fights Corey Anderson. I apologize to Dominic Reyes, a great fighter. Undefeated, young, still has plenty of time in this business, in the game, in the sport. Maybe it is Dominic Reyes versus Jon Jones later in the year. How about that July 4th show? They always do it big for the fight week. But Corey Anderson took over MSG 244. He put a stamp on it. He put the foot down. He said, I'm next. So that gives us one last card. That gives us one last event to main event before we get to the most epic card in UFC history, UFC 250. So the main event of UFC 249 is the Daniel Cormier's retirement fight. DC versus Stipe 3 in the main event. And if you guys know me, my favorite word in mixed martial arts is trilogy. There we go. We got it. UFC 250, 5 fights, the main card as follows. You got to start the card off with a bang. I need a fighter's fight to start it off. I need something to whet the appetite for the rest of my card. And after seeing Kevin Lee knock out Gregor, the first fight, Kevin Lee versus Justin Gaethje. Who would not want to see that? That is must-see TV. That can main event multiple different cards around this country. That's my first fight on the card. An important lightweight fight. The winner is right there. The winner could be maybe next. We'll see what happens. Kevin Lee versus Justin Gaethje to start off my card. Next, I'm bringing it straight to the title. We got 3 title fights in a row. Henry Cejudo, Triple C. He's going to put his belt on the line versus Dominic Cruz. I know Joseph Benavidez is out there. I know there's other, there's title contenders. I'm making the statement fight. UFC 250, Dominic Cruz comes back healthy. Cruz versus Cejudo. And I think it's a great spot for it because I think it's going to be an amazing fight. And sometimes the UFC, it's hard to put Cejudo in the main event to carry the whole card. So you make this unbelievable fight. You get the title on the line, and you just put it into the most epic card of all time, UFC 250. Okay, what's next? We got to bring it to the females. We need a female fight on this card. And then this is any fight you can make in the UFC right now on the female side. This is it. This is the passing of the torch, maybe. This is the redemption story. This is Joanna Jędrzejczyk versus Zhang Weili. Zhang Weili is one of the most dominant female fighters of all time. Predicted here on the Fight Bananas podcast years ago was going to be the strawweight champion of this universe. Joanna, after defeating Michelle Waterson in spectacular fashion, 5 rounds of just beautiful, aggressive offense. This fight, Tampa was around a month ago, 6 weeks ago. I know she hurt her foot, gives her the rest of the year, gives her probably to February to March before to start training. I think this is perfect timing. I think this is the female fight to make. This is the best fight you can make in mixed martial arts on the female side. Joanna Jędrzejczyk versus the champ, Zhang Weili. We're down to 2, guys. I'm hoping you're liking my card so far. The co-main event. I need a fight for the title. I need a fight to bring fans from all over the world. I need a fight that's going to be 5 rounds of complete chaos. The middleweight championship is on the line, guys. Israel Adesanya versus Yoel Romero. Yoel's got the nod. He has the spot. Costa's hurt. He's out for 8 to 10 months. Yoel Romero earns the nod. No one fights Yoel Romero and comes out unscathed. Maybe the uncrowned champ in the middleweight division finally gets the shot, and I think he gets the job done. Yoel Romero versus Israel Adesanya could main event any card in the world. This is how stacked UFC 250 is. I have Kevin Lee versus Gaethje. Then 3 title fights in a row. Cruz, Cejudo. Joanna versus Zhang Weili. And then the co-main event, Yoel Romero versus Israel Adesanya, the last style bender. So here we go. The main event of UFC 250. What could it be? I have title fights all across the board. You can't have 4 title fights. So this fight, is it for a title? You got to have the king of the UFC on the card. You got to have the biggest name in mixed martial arts on this card to headline. And you do. And his name is Jorge Masvidal. Jorge Masvidal, I don't care if you defend the BMF title on this or not. And maybe you do. Maybe you really trademark, maybe really put some legitimacy on this title. The fight is this. It's not the rematch versus Diaz. After Conor defeated Cowboy Cerrone on January UFC 246, Conor moves on. The Notorious moves on to the biggest card in the company's history, Jorge versus Conor. The main event of UFC 250, Jorge Masvidal versus Conor the Notorious McGregor. There you go, guys. Top that. Beat that. Dana White, you're welcome. That's the card to make. That card surpasses every record the company has ever put up. Printing money, cashing checks, and kissing girls. UFC 250. Masvidal versus McGregor. Guys, thank you so much for listening to the Fight Bananas podcast. We appreciate it. The numbers were through the roof in the month of October, the greatest month in the Fight Bananas podcast history. It's the fastest rising podcast in mixed martial arts, Fight Bananas. We appreciate it. Download and subscribe on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, or any podcast platform you listen to. Check out Fight Bananas in that search bar. You'll get us. And subscribe to the YouTube channel. We love it. We just put content on it daily. All the podcast gets added, but we go to gyms. We have just, one-on-one interviews. Sometimes we just put up commercials. You never know what you'll find on the Fight Bananas YouTube channel. Make sure you support all of our sponsors because they support us. I'm talking about myfightshirt.com. I'm talking about Warhammer Fightwear, and Still Nutrition, Fusion CDB products, and Mako Tech mouthguards. Support them because they support us. Thank you so much for listening. This was the UFC 244 Bananas Recap Show and my UFC 250 fight predictions. Make sure everyone stay safe, be blessed, and always stay bananas.